Christian and the Niners appear to be setting up their core for the future, but are they in good hands? We'll discuss that and more on today's Gold Standard podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Fans First Sports Network. I am Rob Stats Guerrera here with a very special guest from Last Second Sports, Jessie Naylor. Jessie, thanks for hopping in today.
Absolutely, Rob. We've talked around it so many times, and it's finally coming together. Not necessarily planned with a long runway, but we're making it happen, man. Appreciate you for having me on.
I let you basically know last second, and you are hooking me up, so I do appreciate that. Okay, lots to get to on today's show. Obviously, big news yesterday. Christian McCaffrey gets a 4-year deal from the 49ers, just over $62 million. It's going to keep him with the team for the foreseeable future. I was just checking your Twitter timeline. I feel like you're not totally on board with the move.
Okay, to be fair, initially I was not, because everything kind of came out in stages, Rob. So initially it was, all right, he signed the extension. We don't know the details. The next stage that came out was the money allocated, and there was a big dead money cap hit in 2028, the year after he left. And then the final year of that deal, it was astronomical. But then when the final stage came out, which was there's an out after 2 years with only $8 million in dead cap, said, all right, I'm actually on board with this, because really all this is a pay raise for 2 years for him that allows the 49ers to free up money for 2 years. Now they will take a dead cap hit, but I imagine that they're most likely still going to be done with Christian McCaffrey after this 2-year stint. I don't think you want to be in business with 30, 31-year-old running backs. So unless he's still spectacular at that time, shows no signs of slowing down, maybe they rework it. But initially the deal did look like it was a full 4 years. You're in bed with him until he's 31 years old, and that is not something I was excited about.
In normal cases, I would be right there with you, because running backs we've seen, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is cooked. I think he's 28 years old. He's absolutely, like, there's nothing left with him because the Cowboys, ran him into the ground. We have seen running backs just flat out wear out. But I will say, I mean, this trade of Christian McCaffrey, in the spectrum of how it could have gone, right? It could have been he's hurt all the time. It could have been, hey, he's great, but he's been banged up a lot. It has gone for the 49ers as well as it could have gone. Like, there is no other universe where Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers works out better. We are living in that universe. So maybe this thing is just going to work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. And at the end of the day, I mean, he was under contract for 2 more years. That was the plan anyways. Now that they've got that out after 2 years, it's really no different to me than when Raheem Mostert came to them. Remember the year he got injured, he never really played, and that's when Elijah Mitchell stepped up. He got hurt in the Lions game, but that year, that offseason, he was disgruntled. He wanted more guaranteed money, so they reworked the deal for the 1 year. That's essentially what they've done here, is said, all right, you don't have any guaranteed money. I understand you want some insurance. You're getting married, the whole thing. This is an old deal. You are important to us. We're going to give you the pay raise you deserve based off of what you've done. But we're also not going to lock ourselves into this long-term agreement in case you are like every other running back that we've come across and you do fall off a cliff a little bit. We're not going to pay you big-time money. So I think this works out perfect for both parties, in my opinion.
I saw a bite from Chris Sims, I think a week and a half ago, where he said that he thinks Christian McCaffrey is like the Tom Brady of running backs in terms of working out, taking care of his body, trying to be on the cutting edge of all this stuff. And I do think Christian McCaffrey could be a player who, even when he loses some of his speed and some of those other things, can still be productive, much like the guy who's in the 49ers front office right now, Frank Gore.
Yeah, so you're saying that he eats a lot of avocado ice cream and is preparing that way? Is that what's happening?
Stretches a lot, I guess. I don't know if he's hooked up with Alex Guerrera or not, or what the deal is there. But I think that McCaffrey, even if they did want to keep him and didn't just make it a 2-year deal, I think he could still have value. Not maybe as the lead guy by that point, but, and again, I may be totally biased just because of how this whole thing has worked out. I still can't get over. He has not just been healthy. He has been incredible for the 49ers.
Oh, they've certainly got their money's worth. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if that's what's going on, but they've certainly got their money's worth, no doubt about it. I think at this point they're playing with house money on the situation. The trade has worked out in their favor. I think initially there was some pushback from some people on the trade. I loved it from the beginning, but I can understand why there was some pushback. You never know how healthy he's going to be. He's done all of that. I think the most encouraging thing, Rob, really is not necessarily the deal, but what Shanahan said yesterday at the press conference, which is like, hey, we want to tone it back a little bit, protect him from himself. It's like, Shanahan, dude, we've been saying this since he's been here. This is music to our ears. Now, does that actually happen? I don't know, but it sure does sound good as we sit here in the early parts of June.
Yeah, I like that he said that. And the 49ers, not only I like that he said that, but also they've invested in the running back position. They just drafted Isaac Guerrero. They have Cody Schrader there as well. Like what their actions seem to match up with that. Obviously, they still have JP Mason. They still have Elijah Mitchell. The people are there if they actually want to give Christian McCaffrey a rest. The thing that kind of bugs me a little is Kyle being like, oh, well, Christian hates to come out. Yeah, tough crap, dude. You're the head coach. You decide who plays and who doesn't. Christian can be mad about it on the bench.
Yeah, that really hit me week 1. I was at the game in Pittsburgh, and that was like the biggest thing that I took away. Remember, the game ended up being a blowout and what have you, but the biggest thing I took away was Christian seems to be the one that makes the decision on when he's in and when he's out. There's no coach on the sideline waving for him to come in or out. He chooses. There was multiple times where he'd call somebody in and then he'd get halfway to running out and be like, oh, actually, you know what? I got this one. It's like, okay, well, is somebody going to stop him from playing in a blowout game in week 1 when we don't necessarily need this? Anybody going to step up and take that from him? Apparently not. He's been calling the shots the whole way, but now Kyle's willing to admit, hey, maybe it was a little bit too much. We can't do this with a guy who's 28. I don't care how much avocado ice cream he's eating.
And we don't need to. There's just no need for it. A lot of times we see Christian look at the sideline and holds up the one, like, I'll sit for one play, but then I'm going back in there. It's like, no,
Right.
dude, we got it. We're okay. You've done the dirty work. We can relax a little bit. But he's going to be here at least for the next 2 years. I have said that the Niners, I feel like what they are doing, they recognize we have to find and keep a new core going forward. I think they recognize this is the last run with these guys, and we need to decide who's going to be part of that next group if we're going to keep this train on the tracks. I think it's very clear at this point. They think Brock is part of that. Bosa obviously is part of that. I think Warner is part of that. I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk is part of that.
That's the question, right? We assume that's kind of the thing that's holding me to the thought that they're eventually going to get it done is that Brandon Aiyuk is young. He's a pass catcher. That's what they covet. Apparently, they covet that more than offensive linemen. That's out of their own mouth this week. Yeah. So if that's the case, you would think that Brandon Aiyuk is a guy that's going to get paid. I'm sure they'll move on from Debo. We'll see how long Kittle's here and what have you. But there's going to be money that frees up. Everybody's talking about, well, how do you pay him $30 million and have Bosa and have Warner and then pay Brock Purdy? The way these contracts are staggered, that's helpful. But also knowing that Trent Williams isn't going to play forever, that's nearly $40 million a year off your books. George Kittle's not going to play forever. That's another $20 million. So money is going to free up. You have to keep the core in place. I think it's really hard. Let's say they trade Brandon Aiyuk after this year for a second-round pick. It's really hard to then replace Brandon Aiyuk while also trying to replace Debo and Kittle and Trent and rework the offensive line and do all of that on the fly. I like the young core as it sits, as long as Brandon Ayuk's a part of it. I look at the 49ers and say, okay, as these pieces start to fall off, you probably have a down year or maybe you're an 8-win team, but you can get right back in the saddle and be competing for a Super Bowl again if Brock is who people think he is and you retool the proper way. So for me, I would love to keep Brandon Aiyuk, but I also understand it's a business and two have got to play. And I'm sure Brandon Aiyuk is asking for much more guaranteed money than what they are willing to dole out at this point. And we'll see who ends up caving.
We'll get to Aiyuk a little bit more in a second, but I wanted to play Debo yesterday. I thought this was one of the most honest answers. I absolutely love this. Like, everyone always talks about how real Kyle Shanahan is with people, and I think this is a perfect example. Listen to Debo when he's asked about his future with the team.
Does it hit you now? This might be your last year?
I mean, at the end of the day,
contract was signed. I know what I signed up for, and we just focus on this year.
Yes, that's it. Like he said, I know what I signed up for. I think there's a reason the 49ers signed him to the contract that they signed him to. Like, you don't see any of these other guys going just short, little, quick 3-year deals with outs like Debo did. I think the Niners got it with him. I think he gets it. And I just love that, like, everyone's being real about where things stand in 2024.
I actually think the 49ers do this with most of their players. They just usually at this time, instead of talking about getting rid of him the year after, they start reworking those deals, renegotiating them and kicking the can down the road and working with them that way. I'm sure they sell it to the players of like, hey, you're going to be good. You're going to be in your prime in 3 years. It gives us an out, but it also gives you a chance to make more money and add years onto your contract. And so the players eventually cave and they agree. But the 49ers don't normally just say, all right, yeah, we're going to let you play this thing out and then we'll figure it out next year. That normally does not happen with these big time players. Debo seems to be a little bit different. He's smart, man. I mean, Debo's an intelligent guy. He definitely knows what's at stake here. And he's playing for another deal with a new team. And I think he knows that. And I think that could be a great thing for the 49ers, who are trying to win a Super Bowl right now.
Absolutely. And we hope, obviously, that we get contract year Debo, because contract year Debo is the best version of Debo Samuel that we have seen. And it appears that we are. He was there at OTAs. He looks good. We'll see what happens. Brandon Aiyuk, I don't know. I could see a world where they say, play on your 5th-year option. We're not going past our number. You can't do anything. You can sit out if you want, but good luck. Your contract's not going to toll anyway. So you play at our number, or we'll figure it out. And I don't necessarily blame the 49ers for that. I don't view Brandon Aiyuk as a must-have. I view him as a nice-to-have.
Okay, maybe for the future, but you don't view him as a must-have in a year that they're trying to win a Super Bowl?
No. I think there's a reason they invested in Pearsall with a first-round pick. I think they don't think he's a must-have. I think they hedged their bet a little bit. I think they said, we'd love to have Brandon Aiyuk, of course. But if we have Pearsall here, we don't have to budge on the contract. We'll go to war with Pearsall and Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey and Jennings, and we'll roll that dice.
Yeah, I don't think they have to necessarily budge on the contract because he's still going to be a part of the team this year. Even if he decides to sit out, I think, 11 games or 8 games that you have to play to accrue, whatever that number is, even if he sits out the maximum, they know they're going to have him back and ready for the playoffs. And I'm sure they're going to utilize him. So, yeah, they don't have to budge on the contract. I'm hard pressed to say that if Aiyuk were to miss the season or they were to trade him now, I think their chances of winning a Super Bowl go down significantly.
I don't think so. I think it's really weird that people are like, oh, Brock Purdy, he stinks. Shanahan gets everybody open for him. Yet at the same time, they don't say Shanahan gets Brandon Aiyuk open or Shanahan gets Kittle open or McCaffrey or anybody else. It's only Brock that gets the Shanahan bump. Maybe the Niners look at it like Aiyuk is getting the Shanahan bump.
Oh, I'm sure that Shanahan looks at it and says they're all getting the Shanahan bump. I'm positive of that. But, we also saw that he tried to manufacture touches for Debo in the Super Bowl, and he was unable to get open, regardless of what he tried to do schematically. Sometimes you just need good players that can get open. And I have no doubt that Ricky Pearsall is polished and maybe can eventually fill that role. But I also know that a majority of the time, rookie wide receivers do struggle. And I think relying on Ricky Pearsall to come in right away and be that player, I wouldn't trust that. That's just me personally.
That is clearly not, plan A, like like the Matrix and like the machines in the Matrix, right? There are levels of existence we're prepared to accept. I think the Niners are prepared to accept that. I don't think they actually want to accept it. I saw this tweet from Arif Hassan, who tweeted out the wide receiver double team rates, which, first of all, Justin Jefferson, it is absurd how much more he gets double teamed than any other wide receiver in the league. If you're watching on the stream right now, there is a huge gulf between number 1, Justin Jefferson, and number 2, Tyreek Hill. But I asked Arif, where does Brandon Aiyuk fall on that list? And he is 15th out of 105 wide receivers in the set at 23.4% of the time. So I was kind of interested in that because that to me tells me like how defensive coordinators view Brandon Aiyuk. Is he viewed as like this incredible elite number one wide receiver, or where does he fall? 15th is certainly not bad by any stretch, but I also don't think it's like, oh my God, this guy's incredible.
Yeah, there's some good names on that list though, Rob. I mean, there's a lot of really good receivers in the league right now. I don't know that he's a top 10 receiver. I think you can make the argument for that. But once you get around 8 or so, there's probably 6 guys you can make that argument for. Maybe he's top 10, maybe he's not. He's certainly a top 15 receiver. I think we can agree on that. And right now, I mean, if you just go without a top 15 receiver going into this year, I don't know how that doesn't hurt your chances. Now, does it hurt your chances as much as losing CMC? Probably not. Trent Williams or even Kittle, I don't know. But man, no Brandon Aiyuk and replacing him with average value replacement, it's a pretty big drop off.
And we'll see what actually unfolds. Did you see the tweet from Mike Silver yesterday about the possible outcomes with Aiyuk and all of that? I thought that was really, really interesting.
I saw a little bit of it. What did he say? He said he was given the 3 options, like the 5th-year option, trade him, keep him, pay him. But I didn't necessarily like dive too deep into it. What were your thoughts?
Here's what he said. He tweeted out a bunch of options. The number 4 option, or 3 and 4, was interesting. If Aiyuk doesn't take the best offer and presumably plays on the 5th-year option, it's Hunger Games between him and Debo to see who stays beyond 2024. And then finally, there's a chance either one could be traded between now and the deadline. The scenario that I think scares me the most is if he plays on the 5th-year option and then Debo and Aiyuk start paying attention to / complaining about targets and who gets the ball more and all of that stuff. That I think is the worst case scenario for the 49ers, because you can criticize Kyle Shanahan all you want for whatever you want to criticize him for, but he has kept this locker room pretty together through ups and downs. And this kind of stuff, guys complaining and competing for targets, that hasn't been an issue for this team. And now potentially it could be.
I think that's a very good point. It's something that I brought up a few weeks ago because, the 49ers have 39 unrestricted free agents going into next year, which on the surface sounds great because, hey, you're getting a bunch of guys on 1-year deals that want to get paid. We just talked about it with Debo. So far, it's having a great effect. He's coming in early. He's coming in shape. Seems like you're going to get contract year Debo. He's still on a mission to win a Super Bowl. That's awesome. But the flip side of that is you don't have a bunch of guys that are fat-bellied and paid, which means now they may be the best they've ever been, but they might be the best they've ever been selfishly instead of as a team. And they may want those targets. They may not be okay with seeing 3 targets in a game and watching their teammate go off. You may not see Brandon Aiyuk willingly block for Debo Samuel downfield to help him get paid if he's not getting paid. Those things can factor in. Now, I hope that's not the case. They're professionals. I get all of those things. But just because you're trying to get paid, it doesn't mean that you're not trying to do so selfishly. And that's not necessarily the best thing for the team either. So I am curious to see what that would look like 8-10 games in if Brandon Aiyuk is getting targeted the way he did last year while also trying to get paid and hasn't had a reworked deal. It might not play very well for the 49ers. Are you muted? I think you're muted.
I do it once a show. It's a great point by you. It's easy to be a team guy in June, right? Just like when you first move in college, all your roommates are going to pick up after themselves. They don't care if you touch their stuff. Everybody's going to get along. We're all singing Kumbaya. It's a different thing altogether once the season starts, once guys begin to get targeted. God forbid the 49ers struggle too. That adds an extra layer to this. We've seen them start slow in the past. There is a scenario very easily where it could get ugly. And I don't love that because, again, you're trying to win a Super Bowl. You all got to be pulling in the same direction. They couldn't get it done when they didn't have any of this stuff. We don't need another layer of complexity on top of this situation. And I also think it puts a lot of pressure on Brock Purdy. If that does happen, you need your quarterback to tell people, hey, shut up, stop complaining about the targets. I'll throw to whoever the hell I want, and nobody complain about it because it's my decision. And maybe he's willing to do that. I don't know. But I think it will put Brock in a very interesting position.
Yeah, certainly. I think Brock's ready for that. I mean, one thing that you can't say about Brock Purdy is he hasn't been as mentally prepared as you could possibly be for somebody that's his age. He's a very bright young man. So we know that he's going to come in as a leader. We know he's going to come in prepared. And he's probably about as ready for that situation as you can be. But he can't go out and do the dirty work for him. He can't make Brandon Aiyuk go out and block on routes for other guys. He can't make these guys not get disgruntled when the ball isn't headed their way. And again, it may not be an issue at all, but I do think you are running the risk when you have a bunch of players that are trying to get paid. All of a sudden, they might get a little bit more selfish, and all it takes is a little bit more selfish, and that could be a reason why you don't win a game because you're not doing the little things. So it is something worth watching. Ultimately, do you think that Brandon Aiyuk gets paid? Because I do. I think his contract does get worked. He is here week 1. He's got a new contract and he's good to go. What are your thoughts?
If I had to place money on it, I would say yes. Unless his demands are just so crazy, but I don't know that they will be. I mean, the wide receiver market is set. Like, we've seen guys get deals. There's really no disputing the ballpark. So in the end, like, what are you really going to be arguing over? A couple of $1 million one way or the other? Are the 49ers really going to let that stop them from potentially having everybody on board and having everybody pulling in the same direction? I don't know that they are. Their history, at least recently under Shanahan, says that they won't.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a deal gets done. I definitely think that the hang up is guaranteed money. And you're right. The market said, I look at Justin Jefferson getting paid and I don't say, oh man, Ayuk just got more money. Now, when those other guys were getting paid that are around his level, it's like, okay, you're starting to see where this money could come from. You're starting to see how 30 million average annual value can happen all of a sudden. But the guaranteed money is not as high for those guys as what you would think. Really, the one who got the best deal is not being talked about, and that's Calvin Ridley. I don't know how he continues to fleece teams as if he's just been this superstar for many years. That one boggles my mind. He's only at 23 million average annual value or something around there, but he got the most guaranteed money at like 47 million. And Brandon Ayuk's looking at it saying, okay, that's great that you're going to give me the 4-year, 120 million and 35 million guaranteed. I want 47 guaranteed because Debo got 41 2 years ago, and that's probably where the hang up is. So we'll see. I'm sure that each side, the 49ers side, the Brandon Aiyuk side, they're going to have to acquiesce a little bit, and that's okay. But I think they'll eventually agree to a deal, and Brandon Aiyuk will come in happy, and he'll play just fine.
Yeah, the Justin Jefferson deal, I mean, that's a 70% increase in guaranteed money over number 2, which is Tyreek Hill. Like, that's absurd. That is such a massive jump. Like, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, you can't even pretend to argue that you deserve that. Like, you get laughed out of the room. They're not even close. And that's why I loved the report from Schefter that the Niners called the Vikings and they were like, hey, can we get Justin Jefferson? And the Vikings were like, no, dude. But like, I like that they did that. I love that this regime doesn't rule anything out. They go for the big swing. They called the Patriots and said, hey, can we trade for Brady? Like, I love that they do that. They take big swings. They don't just sit there and say, well, our team is good enough. They're like, no, let's go for it. Let's explore it. Let's see what happens. Are they perfect all the time? No, but I love that they at least investigated.
Yeah, I do too. I think Jamar Chase is happy and he's looking at it going, okay, all right, now I got the framework of what I should ask for. So he's extremely happy. I don't know that BA is, but here's how it could impact BA. I was just thinking through this. CeeDee Lamb is still out there. What does CeeDee Lamb think he is as a player? Does he think he's closer to Jefferson, or does he think that he's closer to Waddle? And if he thinks he's closer to Jefferson and the Cowboys eventually agree, I know that BA is looking at CD and like, listen, I could put up all those numbers over there. I'm every bit as good as CeeDee Lamb. So if all of a sudden he resets the market, he's getting 55, 60 million guaranteed. It's like, okay, now all of a sudden you might have a real problem on your hands. And I could see that scenario where the 49ers are just not willing to play ball.
I honestly wonder if that's the real disconnect, is that Ayuk saying, if you gave me the targets, I'd put up numbers with anybody. And I proved it last year. And the 49ers are saying, that's great, but we don't give anybody those targets and we never will. So why should we pay you like that? So, and I get both sides of it, to be honest with you. What I think the 49ers should keep in mind, hopefully, is like, hey, as guys age, as Kittle ages out, as Trent ages out, as some of these guys have to leave, McCaffrey, you will give Brandon Aiyuk those targets. So you want to lock him in at a number now because that's going to look like a bargain down the road.
Yeah, you're not paying for what players have done. You're paying for the forecast of what you think they will do, which was always interesting with Debo. It really felt like they were paying for what he had done, knowing damn well he was never going to have another season like that season. That doesn't mean he can't be a good player, but it did seem like a lot of money for what the projections were that he was going to be in the future. Brandon Aiyuk, on the other hand, he's coming off of a good season, but I think that there's better seasons in his bag, and I think that that's what he's waiting for. And he's looking at it saying, listen, I know this year I won't be the number one guy, but next year I probably will be. And I am going to catch 100 balls, and I am going to put up the 1,600 yards and the 10 touchdowns and all of those things when I get those targets. And that's when my money kicks in. You're paying me for what I'm about to do, not for what has happened already. And so, yeah, I can see why there's a hang up.
And I think the Niners could structure it in a way that where it doesn't really kick in until he sort of evolves into that number one wide receiver, because we've seen how they structure deals. We see how they lower people's cap numbers early, and then, it kicks in later. This is not a new thing with the 49ers. Let me see. Gameplan.exe on Twitch. Shout out to the Twitch fan. Brock told Trent Williams to shut up in the huddle, so I think he'll be able to put Debo in their place. Hopefully. And I love that Brian Griese has talked about an important part for Brock is becoming a more vocal leader and dealing with, the part of it that comes with being a star quarterback. I think that is the number one benefit to having a former quarterback as your QB coach. Like, he gets it. He knows that experience. And I do think that's a factor for Brock. And I want to see it. I am here for it, man, because I think that is the next step for Purdy.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Did you happen to see it? I noticed it or saw it. Shout out to Ryan. He texted to me. But your friend Kay Adams had Donovan McNabb on. Did you see what he had to say about Kyle Shanahan?
I didn't see the McNabb. I know that she had him on, but I didn't see the interview.
Yeah, he was basically asked, like, why is it that Shanahan has not won a Super Bowl? Is it preparation? Does he get nervous and clam up? And he's like, no, I don't think he gets nervous, but he doesn't necessarily prepare the way that he should. Situational football he's not ready for, and that much has been clear. So I know that there's a little bit of friction probably between McNabb and Shanahan, but it is interesting that he was just so forthright with that. It's like, yeah, no, it's the preparation is basically what it comes down to.
Interesting. I will note that Mike Shanahan's the guy that took McNabb out because they said he wasn't in shape to run the 2-minute drill. So there may be a little friction there.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that Kyle was unprepared. If anything, I think he would be over-prepared. Mike McDaniel has talked about how some coaches were melting down before the Super Bowl. I think Kyle probably puts too much on himself. I know Grant has tried to push this narrative that Kyle didn't know the overtime rule. I think that's garbage. I've told that to Grant to his face, so I'm not speaking out of turn here. If anything, look, McNabb, I guess, would know, but I also think he has a pretty significant axe to grind. Everything I've seen from Kyle leads me to believe that he'd be over-prepared rather than under-prepared.
But there are some interesting things that happen, right? Where he just refuses to practice with a wet ball, knowing that there's rain in the forecast. It's like, that's a part of the preparation, getting your players ready for all the scenarios. You often hear about it throughout the years that X team they're a young team. They're not used to the environment they're going into. So instead we moved practice inside, we cranked up the speakers, and we got them ready for the noise and working through that. Like, those are the little pieces of preparation that you love to hear about. And Kyle Shanahan flat out's like, no, we're not going to practice with a wet ball. We want to run the offense to perfection, and we'll figure it out on Sunday. It's like, well, dude, it's going to rain. It's not going to go perfect. Maybe, just maybe, you might want to practice with a wet ball. So those little things are interesting, but as far as just knowledge of the game, knowing what he wants to run in certain situations, I'm sure that he is as prepared for that as he can be, even though it doesn't necessarily tend to work out late in fourth quarters of Super Bowls for whatever reason.
Yeah, Kyle needs to get over the whole, like, we can't ever interfere with practice. Like, you're practicing for the game. Things don't always go according to plan in the game. And he should be practicing with the wet ball, but even if he doesn't, Brock should be. After practice, dunk that football in that bucket of water and throw 40, 50, 60 times. Like, that's part of what they're going to be paying you probably, $40-50 million a year to do. So yes, Kyle should do it, but Brock needs to take matters into his own hands, because I can't have number 13 dropping back to pass, wiping his hand off on the towel in the middle of the play, and then trying to throw the football.
Yeah, it clearly was in his head. Like that much is clear. It was in his head, and I do believe it's a mental thing, because everybody's like, oh, it's the hand size. Patrick Mahomes has the same size hands. Now, they grip the football differently. Maybe that plays into it. I get it. But man, at this point, your hands are big enough. That's not the issue. But dropping back and wiping your hand, that's a clear sign that it's in your noggin a little bit.
Well, and not only that, remember, he went no glove, then he went to the glove, and then he took the glove off. He doesn't know what to do to fix it. I think that much is clear. And people, I talked about that with Kay Adams yesterday, and people, oh, he's got to go to the rain game. He's looking for reasons to knock Brock when you have to complain about the rain. Yeah, man, that's the thing. That's a real legit thing. It rains sometimes, and if I'm paying my guy $50 million a year, I don't want to have to check the weather report before a game.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. That's the argument I make when I talk about Josh Allen, and people somehow think that Brock is on that level. That one blows my mind. But either way, the argument is always made, and it's like, hold on a second. You do realize that we talked about the weather and the rain and how it impacted that game, and that was kind of the excuse. When Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes were getting ready to play in frigid temperatures and cold air or wet ball or whatever, you never hear anybody go, man, how is that going to impact the game? You know why? Because it doesn't impact their game, because their arms cut through that and they can work around it, and they always perform in every adverse situation. When Tua and the Miami Dolphins were going to play the Kansas City Chiefs, everybody talked about it all week. How's Tua in Miami going to deal with cold weather? The very next week, we had worse temperatures and worse scenarios, and nobody said anything because those guys can play through it. That's a thing.
That was the easiest bet in the world, by the way, that the Dolphins were going to lose that game.
Yeah, of course.
Like, are you kidding me? There is zero chance of that. But yeah, I would love to see Brock in the rain more this year, because it's a real thing. How does he adjust to it? Like we said, it's in his head. Has he figured out something to do? I don't know. But all I know is Peyton Manning was dunking footballs in water to practice with it. And if it's good enough for Peyton Manning to do, it's good enough for Brock Purdy to do. Damn it.
Well, if there's anybody that is going to figure it out, I would imagine it would be Brock. We talk about his work ethic and all the mental side of the things. That's his superpower. So I think he will figure it out, but I would love to see it. I would hate to go all season without any adverse weather and be like, yeah, I'm sure he's got it. Let's just pay him a bunch of money. And then next year you're in the NFC Championship and it's in a downpour in Lambeau Field or snowing. And it's like, oh, what was I going to do? It got a little wet. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And people, they sit there and they say, oh, you guys are being ridiculous. But also, like you say, just win a damn Super Bowl. Well, what if the 49ers are the number one seed? They get all the way to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, and then it rains and they don't win because this becomes an issue. So, like, yeah, we want it figured out. Cynthia, YouTube channel member, says, how do you think Debo feels about the Jefferson inquiry by the 49ers? He did say when he first heard about the trade rumors, like, oh, it was a thing at first, but we worked it out, whatever. Here's the thing, Cynthia. I don't care how Debo feels about it, because he could get mad all he wants. Be better. Be as good as Justin Jefferson, and then you won't have to worry about it, Debo, because you are clearly not.
Really, for me, I want to know how Aiyuk feels about it, because if you look at everything the 49ers have done, they've signed a second tight end. They drafted 2 receivers. They tried to trade for Justin Jefferson. Your name was on the chopping block during the draft at some point. Now, they ended up not making a deal, and that's fine. But every single thing has led to, we don't find value in you, potentially, if you're taking things personally. So if that's the case, you got to be a little bit frustrated. And then, oh, by the way, you watch 2 of your teammates, one that plays your position, getting paid with no issue. You're like, dude, where's my money? What the hell is going on over here? So I'm sure he's frustrated.
Shout out to Cynthia, YouTube channel member, and all our YouTube channel members. Please consider it if you want to support the channel. It's less than $3 a month. It makes a big difference to me. You get priority comment response, custom emojis, membership badges as well. Yeah, I mean, Logan Thomas got paid. Colton McKivitz got paid. Juwan Jennings got paid. All these guys are getting paid before you. If you're Brandon Aiyuk, I could understand if he was a little salty about that because his contribution, as much as we all love Juwan Jennings, BA's contribution is just a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Marilee Murphy says, oh my God, I'm late, but I've been waiting for this partnership a long time. We've gotten a lot of comments, Jesse, about people have been wanting and hoping that you and I would do a show together.
Yeah, I gotta say, I put out a poll on my, on my feed or whatever, on YouTube, my community tab. That's what it's called. Okay. On my community tab, and said, hey, who have I not collaborated with that you would like me to collaborate with? And your name came up quite often. Oh. So yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Well, we may not have collaborated on the air, but you have been a tremendous help to me off the air in terms of YouTube, how to do it well, how to actually build up a channel. For anyone that doesn't know, Jesse is unbelievable, helping people, giving people confidence they could actually do this damn thing. It's why you need to subscribe to Jesse's channel, Last Second Sports. I know you've got multiple channels, actually.
I do. Yeah. Thank you for the kind words, man. I mean, I just like to see people succeed, and I'm here to help anybody. The way I look at it is, I think you can look at it as competition, but I think that you can also look at it as, if I raise everybody else's floor, then I start to collaborate with these people. Like, doesn't that inevitably also help me? Like, why would I not be positive and try to uplift other people? So thank you for mentioning that.
No, well, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, believe me. And I never tell anybody not to consume anybody else. I know I trash Lombardi because he frustrates the hell out of me. If you want to watch him. That's fine. Watch anybody you want. In fact, watch everybody, because the more people you watch, the more perspectives you get. And then it's up to you to figure out, what you find valuable and what you don't. But I do agree. I mean, look, I see the YouTube stats. I see all the people that watch my stuff, watch your stuff. Like, it's one community.
Exactly.
John Veen, YouTube channel member, says, how do you pronounce that word?
Recoup?
Yes, recoup. I had RJ Ochoa, my friend RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys on. He said recoup, which is absurd. I don't know. It's like the French version or something. He says recoup. I told him it's not like an overthrow of the government here. It's recoup with the P. You got to say it.
What is that? Like, I'm going to go for a yog. It's just a light J that you're throwing out there. What's happening?
I don't understand it. Cynthia says, I'm proud of Jesse. I remember when somebody hoodwinked his channel. What happened?
Yeah, that was, I was about a year into my original channel, and I was doing the call-in shows, and somebody came on and flashed some pornography and then reported the channel. And by the time my show was done, the channel was gone, and that was it. And I had to start all over. So
what? So somebody came on your show just to sabotage you? Yeah,
basically.
Okay, so never inviting anyone on my show ever again? And there was nothing you could do? You couldn't say, like, this person, totally.
I tried. I reached out to YouTube. I appealed it. I edited it out. I did everything I could, and YouTube just never got back to me. So
brutal. That is crazy. I did not know that, but lesson learned for me. So I'm going to benefit from your misfortune, which is really what
that's it. Listen, the call-in show, that's why people are like, why don't you ever bring people on camera? Well, that is why. So I do a call-in show, and you'll see my face and my face only, and that's fine. But no, I don't bring people on camera that I don't work with regularly.
Ooh, that is a crazy thing. All right. Really quick, final thought. When do you think the Brandon Aiyuk contract gets done?
I don't think it's done by training camp. I think there's a lot of work to do on this thing. Like I said, if CD gets signed, I think that can only complicate things. I would say before preseason game number 2.
Ooh, that is a long time. And we've seen multiple 49ers players say that has impacted their season. We will see with Brandon Aiyuk. But thank you, Jesse, for coming on. Everybody like and subscribe to Jesse's channel, Last Second Sports on YouTube. I'll be back later tonight. 11 and I will be back live a little bit later. He's back from vacation, so enjoy that. That'll be around 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, so we will be back. We'll get into everything that we missed while he was gone. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody. We'll talk later tonight.